Do you have Amex points that you're not sure what to do with? Earning American Express points can actually be really easy between category bonuses like 4x on groceries and restaurants with the Amex Gold, or 4x on ads and software with the Amex Business Gold. Amex has also been really generous with targeted sign-up bonuses lately, as we've seen multiple sign-up bonuses over 100,000 points. But what are the best ways to actually use these points once you're sitting on a bank of Amex points? Today's tutorials cover great redemption options that are largely unique to Amex transfer partners, so let's jump right in.
So the first airline that we're going to cover is Hawaiian Airlines, where Amex and Bilt are the only transfer partners that'll transfer to Hawaiian Airlines. So let's see what we can do with this. One of the cool things that you can do with Hawaiian Airlines is if you want to fly between different islands, like let's say you wanted to go between Honolulu and Kauai. Let's just pick a date that's far out in the future. Say Valentine's Day, one adult, and then click miles here. You can search for flights. So this is less than an hour, but you can fly it for about 7,500 miles or starting at 15,000 miles if you wanted to fly first class. It's a really short flight if you wanted to do first class, but that is something that you could do with Hawaiian miles if you wanted to. Another thing that you can do if you are based in the US is you can fly all the way from JFK to, let's say, Honolulu using Hawaiian miles. Let's pick a date that's far out in the future, book with miles, search flights. And if you wanted to fly all the way there, it's about 11 hours. You could fly in main cabin for 30,000 miles plus $6. And first class, this is a lie flat seat, but it's going to cost 130,000 miles per person each way, which I would consider a little bit steep. If it's an 11-hour flight, usually I would be aiming to spend less than 10,000 points per hour of flight time in business or first class. And this is a little bit over the 111. This is a little bit over the 110,000 mark that I would be aiming to stay under. Hawaiian Airlines has this interesting pricing chart. This is an article from the Points Guy, where if you are trying to fly between North America and Hawaii, it'll usually cost about 30,000 miles here, sometimes 40 to 60,000. And we do see that saver space for main cabin. But if you want to do first class, it'll usually be 80,000 to 130,000. We are right at the top of as expensive as it could possibly get. They do sometimes have first or business class saver space. If you ever found this for 40,000 points, that would be incredible. I have a very, very difficult time finding anything for that price. And as you can see, where we have to click modify search and search one date at a time, Hawaiian Airlines doesn't have an easy award flight calendar where you can see what dates are going to have saver space and which ones are not. So it can take a lot of time to just click through the different dates to try to find any of this saver space if it even exists. One thing that you can try to do is upgrade. So if you got this coach saver space for 30,000 points, then you could upgrade for 25,000 points. I would just call Hawaiian Airlines to see if you can do that and say, hey, I have a main cabin ticket. Can I spend another 25,000 points to upgrade to business class or first class? If that is something that you want to do, where they can tell you over the phone if that's something that they're going to allow. Other things that you can do with Hawaiian Airlines, you can also fly instead of to the United States if you wanted to position to Hawaii. Another way, sometimes it's much easier to find award space from Hawaii to places like Australia or New Zealand or Japan versus from the continental United States. So for example, if we wanted to fly to Tokyo, there's a lot of saver space, once again in main cabin, where it's going to be about 40,000 miles to fly this. But once again, very, very expensive to fly in business class. If you wanted to do that, it's a 10-hour flight. I'd want it to be less than 100,000 miles if I were personally booking this. On the chart, if you are flying between Hawaii and Asia or Japan, you can maybe find some saver space for half the price at 65,000 points. Once again, it's really difficult to find that with Hawaiian Airlines because they don't have that kind of flexible award calendar, which is why you don't see too many people talking about Hawaiian Airlines. But if you do want to hop between islands and experience this airline, it's a really nice airline. And if you wanted to fly this with points, then you would need either Amex or Bilt points to do so.
If you're looking to fly to Hawaii or anywhere else and you're just getting started with points and miles, we offer a free Points and Miles 101 course for you to help you earn and redeem points for your first redemption. The free course covers the terms you need to know, impacts to your credit score, and how to get free upgrades by sending a quick email, and how to easily get top-tier status with many of your favorite airlines and hotel chains. You can grab the free course at geobreezetravel.com/free course, or check out the link in the description box. Have you ever heard points people say that Hyatt is the only points program worth transferring points to, or that Hilton points are largely useless and you should never move flexible points like Amex there? Well, that line of thinking is 99% right, until it's 100% wrong. There can actually be a good case for transferring Amex points to Hilton, which transfers at a 1-to-2 rate. Here's the play.
Another transfer partner that's available exclusively with Amex is Hilton. I normally would not recommend moving your Amex points over to Hilton, except in the case for really expensive hotels like the example we're going to go over here. You can move Amex points over to Hilton at a 1-to-2 ratio. So that means if you move 1,000 Amex points over, it actually shows up as 2,000 Hilton points. So here we're going to go over the example of Conrad Bora Bora Nui, which is one of the most aspirational Hilton hotel resorts in the world. Let's just pick some dates far out into the future. Let's say our dates are flexible and see what we've got. And we're going to view available dates. Let's change this to US dollars. As we can see, it's usually about $1,646, over $1,600 per night to stay at this resort. So it is a very expensive resort. Let's see what this would cost in points. So we'll click on special rates, use points, click update. And most of the time, it is going to be more than 1 million points for one night. I highly cannot recommend enough you do not do that. Do not move over 600,000 or 700,000 Amex points to stay one night at this hotel. But there are a couple nights here and there where you can stay at this hotel for 120,000 points. And those are Hilton points, so that would actually cost 60,000 Amex points moved over. And if we take $1,646, which would be the cash rate divided by 60,000, you're getting about 2.7 cents per Amex point to stay at this resort, which is not bad at all. If you were to get something like the Hilton Aspire card, you could stay a couple nights here, one with 60,000 Amex points, and then another night by using a free night certificate with your Hilton Aspire card or your Hilton Surpass card. If you put more than $15,000 on it in a calendar year, then they give you a free weekend night certificate that you can use at pretty much any Hilton hotel in the world, and it can be very lucrative to use those at resorts such as this one, which ordinarily would be very expensive to stay at.
Did you know that you can easily earn a lot of Amex points without opening a bunch of Amex cards or spending a lot of money on your Amex cards? Rakuten is a shopping portal that lets you earn cash back on tons of your favorite stores. And if you install the Rakuten Chrome plugin, you can nearly automate earning points on Rakuten without having to check their site for partnered stores. Check out the link in the description box to get at least $30 back with your first purchase with Rakuten. And the best part is, if you have even one Amex card that earns membership rewards points, such as the Amex Platinum, Amex Gold, Amex Blue Business Plus, or many others, you can link up your Amex account to a free Rakuten account and cash out your Rakuten points as Amex points. I'd highly recommend doing this because if you earn one Amex point instead of 1% cash back, you are essentially doubling your cash back rate. And that's because Amex points can usually be redeemed for at least 2 cents per point of value when transferred to the different partners mentioned in this video. And if you want to get the play-by-play on my favorite money-making Rakuten deal that can get you a free flight to Europe, I have that play and tons of other tricks in my free webinar, You Don't Need 20 Cards. In that webinar, I go over some of my favorite methods to earn more points like stacking, reimbursable spending, and status matching. And you can sign up for the free webinar by going to geobreezetravel.com/webinar. I have a rule of thumb where I'm willing to spend up to 10,000 points per hour in business class. But what if you could fly 22 hours or more in business class for only 88,000 points? Amex is an exclusive transfer partner with ANA, which is a fantastic airline program for getting a ton of value out of your Amex points. Here's how to use ANA to book sweet spot flights to Europe.
One of the most popular transfer partners with Amex that's exclusively an Amex partner is with ANA, where you can use this to fly to Europe round trip for 88,000 points in business class, which is an amazing deal if you can find the availability. So what you would do is you would just search for book ANA award tickets. You'll find this page and then click on reserve or purchase, apply for an ANA International Flight Award. You'll be taken to this page and there's a couple things that you need to note. So with ANA, you cannot book one-way flights. You can either do round trip or you can do open jaw, where for example, you could fly Chicago over to Europe and then back from Europe to New York. You could do that, but you cannot just book one-way trips with this. So you're going to select award reservation and then round trip, and let's just search for Chicago to Istanbul. for an example here. Pick a day that's far out in the future. So let's say May 8th, and then coming back the following week. Let's pick a day that's far out in the future. So let's say May 1st, 2024, returning the week after. And we do always want to check this box, compare seat availability plus or minus 3 days so that we can have more flexibility and see more availability, just in case our first choice date does not actually have any seats available. Let's see if we can find anything in business class for one passenger for now, and then click search. So this calendar will tell you what days they actually have seats available. So not every day is going to have available seats, but we will have it here on, let's say, April 29, and then let's say we want to fly back a week later on May 6th. Then we can go ahead and click next. And so we can see here, this is operated by Turkish Airlines. It's a 10.5-hour flight from Chicago to Istanbul in business class on the way there. And then on the way back, this one goes from Istanbul to Munich, and then Munich to Chicago, but this one is in economy class. And this will cost a total of 88,000 miles for the entire round trip flight, plus about $500 in taxes and fees. It is going to price out at 88,000 miles whether this entire thing is in business class, or if most of it is in business class and part of it is in economy, or if any part of it is in business class. So if you really want to get the most out of your points, you want to find something that is entirely in business class if possible. So let's see if any of the other dates have something that goes direct from Istanbul to Chicago, or maybe routes through New York or something, but having the entire thing in business class, especially the part that goes over the ocean. So let's go back and search again. Instead of May 6th, let's try May 7. And we do see on this particular itinerary, we still have that one that goes from Chicago to Istanbul all the way in business class, 10.5 hours. And this one is 11.5 hours in business class. The entire round trip would cost 88,000 points, and it would cost $630 in taxes and fees. I would consider that a really good deal, because here you have 10.5 hours plus 11.5 hours, so 22 hours in Turkish Airlines business class for only 88,000 miles. That is not a bad deal at all. Keep in mind that if you want to move Amex points over to ANA, they do not post instantaneously. It's actually going to take about 3 days for the points to post in your ANA account. So in that case, it's good that there are multiple dates with availability for this particular route that we search for. Because if one of these dates isn't available, you can check all of these other dates and see, is there a backup date where you would be okay to fly, just in case in those 3 days, your first choice date unfortunately disappears.
If you're enjoying these step-by-step tutorials so far, please let me know by clicking that like button, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel for even more points and miles tips each week. We release a weekly video with these types of step-by-step tutorials, and also weekly episodes of the GeoBreeze Travel podcast, where I interview diverse points enthusiasts from all walks of life about how they approach the game of points. I'm also releasing a second podcast episode each week, where I'll be going over more behind-the-scenes content, like how I personally approach different aspects of the game, how I think about building a points and miles business, and tons of other topics. Please be sure to subscribe to the channel and let me know if there are any other topics that you would like for me to cover in future videos. So that ANA trick for flying to Europe round trip in business class for 88,000 points is good, but what the points world really wants from ANA is the elusive round the world redemption, where you could fly up to 8 segments in business class all the way around the world for only about 125,000 points. Here's a tutorial for how to go about setting up a round the world redemption, which can definitely be tricky.
One of the most advanced pinnacle of award travel redemptions is the ANA round the world trip redemption. And so this is one of the reasons people love transferring Amex points over to ANA, is to do this type of redemption. We've had a podcast episode about this, I think a couple podcast episodes about this, but there are a lot of rules to keep in mind if you want to do the ANA around the world. So for example, you have to cross the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean at least once. You have to go just east to west or west to east. You can't backtrack between different zones. You can do up to 8 stops, up to 3 can be in Europe, and your entire trip has to be at least 10 days, and you can have up to 4 ground transportation sectors. So for example, you could do something like this from New York to Frankfurt, over to Narita, and the amount that it's going to charge you is based off of the physical distance that you're flying. So most people tend to land in this band where they're flying about 20,000 miles. If it takes you 20,000 miles physical flying to get from North America to where you want to go in Europe, to where you want to go in Asia, back to North America, then it's going to cost you 85,000 Amex points to fly this in economy, or 125,000 points if you wanted to do this in business class. So you can see a lot of people really, really love to do this redemption because you could fly up to 8 segments in business class for only 125,000 points, which is a fantastic deal. But I'm going to show you that this is pretty difficult to book. So when you go into ANA, you're just going to click on reserve or purchase, apply for an ANA International Flight Award. It's going to take you to this page. You're going to click on award reservation and then multiple cities and mixed classes. So let's just type in some stuff in here. Let's book this for pretty far out. Say we want to go from New York. And it's best if you are booking hub cities that have a Star Alliance hub. So we're talking Istanbul for Turkish Airlines, Toronto, Canada, Frankfurt, Germany, Cairo for Egypt Air, obviously Japan for ANA, Taipei for EVA Airways, things like that. So let's say we want to go from New York to Cairo, and then the following week we can go from Cairo over to Tokyo in Japan, and then the week after that we will go back home from Tokyo over to New York. This is about as simple as it can get. We are crossing the Atlantic once, we are crossing the Pacific once, and furthermore, we are going to do this in economy so that we can easily find award space. So you can see there is a business class seat available from New York to Cairo, but let's say that we want to just do this in economy. Let's jump on the Singapore economy flight from New York over to Frankfurt, and then Frankfurt over to Cairo. Let's say we're good to go there. It's also important to note that as you are looking through the availability, to write down the actual flight numbers. That's going to come in handy later. So the next stop would be from Cairo over to Narita, and all of these look like they go through Frankfurt again. Since Cairo and Frankfurt are both in the same Europe-Africa region, it doesn't count as backtracking, so this is fine. You can do Cairo to Frankfurt over to Tokyo, or Cairo to Frankfurt to Incheon over to Tokyo. This one looks a little bit more interesting, so let's go ahead and book that. So this lets us experience Asiana Airlines as well. And then for our last leg from Tokyo back to New York, we could fly this direct route, or we have a few that let us experience EVA Airways instead. So let's see what that's about. Let's say we wanted to do this EVA Airways. So then you would click next and then ideally book this. However, here's another thing about ANA around the world. You can't book them online. Instead, you are doing this type of search online to find award space, and you are going to write down all of these different flight numbers for the flights that you like. Then once you have all of those written down, you're going to go back to this ANA page and then click on contact information. This is the page for Star Alliance around the world. And you are going to call ANA and read off those flight numbers to somebody on the phone, and they're going to ticket this for you over the phone. You need to know how many points to move over. So what you can do is go to Great Circle Mapper, and here is the route that we came up with. JFK to Frankfurt to Cairo, to Frankfurt to Incheon, to Narita, to Taipei, to JFK. That is going to be 22,000 miles and change. So according to this flight, it's going to cost 100,000 points to fly all that in economy. Every single one of these flights is included. JFK to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to Cairo, Cairo back to Frankfurt, Frankfurt to Incheon, Incheon to Narita, Narita to Taipei, Taipei back to JFK. All of those flights, 100,000 points in economy. If we had found business class for all of that, it would only cost 145,000 points to fly every single one of those segments in business class, which is a really, really good deal. If instead of all of those stopover routes, we just took the bare minimum and said, I want to fly JFK to Cairo, to Narita, back to JFK, and that would only be 18,000 miles, and so it would only need to spend 75,000 points. So here's another thing about ANA around the world. When you move your Amex points to ANA, it does not appear instantaneously. It takes 3 days. So you actually have to hope and pray for those 3 days that these flight numbers that you wrote down and found don't suddenly disappear. Or else you have to go through this again and hope that once the points post, you're still able to find some kind of award availability. That's what makes this really, really challenging. Ideally, if you find these right away, you could call ANA and read off the flight numbers, and if you get a really, really nice customer service representative, they can reserve the space for you for 3 days while you wait for your points to post. Call them back in 3 days and say you're ready to ticket the final thing. But this is one of the most advanced redemptions that people can do in the points and miles world. If you want to do this, you're going to need to book it through ANA, and Amex is the only type of points currency from the flexible points currencies that moves to ANA.
We've covered a ton of different options for how to use Amex points with their exclusive transfer partners, but some of my favorite ways to use Amex points are actually with their partners that also partner with other credit cards. This way, you can pool Amex points with Chase points, Capital One points, Bilt points, or other points to get super good redemptions. And if you're looking for even more next level ways to make the most out of your points and you're not sure how to do so, we do have a couple of options for you. The first one is through the GeoBreeze Travel Patreon, which you can access through patreon.com/GeoBreezeTravel. Each month, we prepare a members-only video with personalized step-by-step tutorials based on the exact departure airports, destination airports, and points currencies our members request. We also host a group coaching session each month where we often have special topics and deep dives into different programs, and you can ask any questions that you have about earning points, redeeming points, credit cards, or anything else in the open forum group coaching. And we have a lot of people who join the $5 level just to say, hey, thank you for the free content on YouTube, Instagram, and the podcast, and I am forever appreciative of your support. And the second option is for business owners or individuals who spend more than $100,000 a year on expenses. If that's you, we would love to chat with you about our points portfolio management offer, where we can show you how to get some really incredible luxury travel with the amount of points that you can earn with that level of spend. You can book a free intro chat with us at geobreezetravel.com/intro call. All right, here are some more of my favorite ways to use Amex points.
So just because an airline is exclusively a partner with American Express, like Hawaiian Airlines only transfers from Amex or Bilt, or we went over Hilton transfers over at a 1-to-2 ratio, or you can use ANA, doesn't necessarily mean that's the best use of American Express points. I actually use my American Express points for airlines that happen to be transfer partners with quite a few other airlines as well. And that doesn't necessarily make them bad. Actually, that can be quite a blessing because you can combine some Amex points with Capital One points or Chase points into one of these following programs that we'll go over. So I really like using Air Canada, I like using Virgin Atlantic, I like using Avianca. You've probably noticed I talk about those quite a bit on the channel. Those are some of my favorite ones to use. So for example, let's look at Air Canada, where we want to go from North America over to Asia. One of the transfer partners that's actually, I think, the easiest to find award space with is Singapore Airlines. So let's see if we can find some partner flights with Singapore. Let's look for business class. And here's a flight from LAX over to Singapore on March 26th. So let's go to singaporeairlines.com, search for LAX over to Singapore on March 26th. Let's just do one way for now, in business class for one adult. And the reason that we would search for seats.aero first is if it's showing up on Air Canada partner flights, it is definitely going to show up on its own website. Sometimes you can skip the seats.aero step if you're just looking to book directly through Singapore Airlines, because they have really, really good availability most of the time. So they have this saver space right here, where you would fly from LAX through Narita over to Singapore Airlines. It's only 107,000 points for about 20 hours minus 1 hour, so 19 hours. 107,000 points is not bad at all for that. Or you could fly some of these other ones. 128,000 is a little bit more than I would personally be willing to pay based off of my 10K rule. Technically, if it's an 18-hour flight, it could be good to go up to 180,000, but if the saver space is available, I do like this price quite a bit more. But we can do better. Even though Singapore Airlines tends to have more availability, if we can find the same flight on Air Canada, it should be cheaper through there. So what we're going to do is go to aircanada.com, click one way, book with Aeroplan from Los Angeles over to Singapore for that same date, one adult, and click on search flights. And here we do see that business class flight from LA to Singapore. This is actually the direct one, and there's only one seat left, so not as much availability, but it's only 87.5 thousand points plus $90 Canadian in taxes. Whereas some of the other ones, I actually don't even see the one that's routing through Narita, but this direct one would cost 128.5 thousand points if booked directly through Singapore's website. So Amex will transfer to either Singapore Airlines or Air Canada. Obviously, if you can find it for cheaper on Air Canada, go ahead and book it there. Another transfer partner that I really like using Amex points for is Avianca, where you can transfer Amex points, Citi points, or Capital One points. So As we're exploring Avianca Life Miles, this is a really good sweet spot over to Europe where you can fly in business class for only 63,000 points. So I would search from North America over to Europe. I recommend paying $8 for the Pro version. So let's try to do this IID over to Vienna for 63,000 miles. There's a lot of last minute availability on Avianca as well. Let's book Boston over to Frankfurt for 63,000 miles. So this will be on July 23rd. So you're gonna go to lifemiles.com, not avianca.com. Select Star Alliance here. We're just gonna search one way at a time. We're gonna search for Boston over to Frankfurt, one adult in business class for now. Click go. And so we're looking for July 23rd. And here we do see there are a few seats left on Lufthansa business class from Boston over to Frankfurt. So you could move your Amex points over to Avianca and jump on some of these. This is a really great option if you are looking to book last minute business class flights to Europe. And the last example that we'll go over today is using Amex points transferred to Virgin Atlantic to book some really great business class and first class flights down to South America. So I like to use the Delta One Finder for this. They have a lot of availability to Bogota, Colombia. There is sometimes some for Buenos Aires, Argentina. Sometimes they have some to Brazil through here as well. The Colombia ones tend to be the sweet spot because that's only 52.5 thousand points. So let's actually do one of these. Let's do JFK over to Bogota near the end of July. So this would be with Virgin Atlantic on July 22nd. So you would go to virginatlantic.com, you would search for JFK over to Bogota, and then just one way for now. We're gonna do this on July 20th, and just one passenger. Make sure you click on advanced search, flexible dates, points, upper class. Then it would only be 52.5 thousand points here. You could click continue. And if you wanted to see details, this is a Delta first class flight for only 52.5 thousand points. It's a 6-hour flight, so I would be willing to pay up to 60,000 points for this, and this meets the threshold.
I hope you found those tutorials useful. Viewer requests on future topics are always welcome, so please let us know in the comments if there are any topics that you would like for us to do a deep dive on. In the meantime, if you like these types of tutorials, I think you'll really enjoy this video next.